My Hero One's Justice 2 is the latest anime-inspired arena fighter by developer Viking, published by Bandai Namco. In this video, we'll talk about its gameplay, all the game modes, how the online works, everything, so you can make an informed decision on whether or not you should buy it. You should know that I played this on a PS4, so that's where this review is coming from, and if you've played the first One's Justice, this sequel does feel like a more complete experience. That said, a lot of its problems still persist, so if you like the first game, there's no reason why you wouldn't like this one, but if you had some problems with it or simply never played it, stick around. That's what the review is for. Before we start tackling all the different game modes, there is something in common to all of them, which is the fighting system. One's Justice 2, just like its predecessor, is an arena fighter. You start by picking out a character from the cast, along with 2 support characters who will help you out in battle. Every character plays in a very unique way, which gives this arena fighter a lot more depth than most others in the same genre. You've got zoners, your rushdown characters, ones that excel at setups, and others that have insane damage. With a roster of 41 characters at launch, this game covers a wide range of archetypes and does an amazing job at translating characters' original abilities from the show into gameplay mechanics. And this significantly increases the game's longevity as it provides players with a huge variety of playstyles. I don't want to understate this aspect. In other arena fighters, characters usually just feel exactly the same, only with a few unique special abilities, but that's really not the case with One's Justice. Every single character has a different playstyle, their normal attacks are different, and they have so many gimmicks that make this 41 character roster very impressive, since the characters aren't just copy and pasted for the most part. That said, there are a few things that these characters have in common. They usually have different versions of fast attacks, yellow attacks which have armor, and unblockable attacks that glow red. They also have 2 buttons dedicated to their unique abilities, and super attacks known in this game as plus ultras. As far as movement goes, characters can run, can dash, they can jump around, they can also air dash, and the speed at which you do all of these things is also character specific. New to this game is a new dodge mechanic. You can now sidestep attacks at the cost of stamina, which has helped make the overall game feel a lot faster. But of course, you're not fighting alone. You also pick 2 assists before joining the battle. You can use them offensively, throwing them out to help you extend a combo, to make your block string safe, or to help you out in neutral. Or use them defensively as a combo breaker mechanic, saving you from damage. Using them defensively though spends your entire assist gauge, while using them offensively only spends about half. Assists have been completely revamped for One's Justice 2. Breaking an opponent's combo is pretty much guaranteed, as the assist essentially pauses the game and hits your opponent. And while this might seem annoying or broken, assists are actually needed a lot more offensively now, thanks to a small change that made dash cancels cost meter. Previously, you could extend a combo by dash canceling once. Now, you can dash cancel as many times as you want, but it does cost meter, meaning extending combos with assists will be much more appealing, otherwise you won't have enough meter for your supers. And if you're using assists to get out of your opponent's combo all the time, you're sacrificing a lot of damage for the next time you open them up. Also, assists can now throw their own supers. If you have the meter to spend, you can basically follow up any combo by your main character with a super from your assist. So once again, while that combo breaker mechanic seems annoying and unfair, the damage the player sacrifices for breaking a combo is immense. Now, dash cancels costing meter also allow the developers to give players a bit more freedom. For instance, if the opponent is blocking, you can now dash cancel a block string with any character, something that was very character specific in the first game, making it very tricky for the opponent to press a button. So tricky, in fact, that they also added a guard cancel ability. This won't deal any damage, but it will get the opponent off of you, because the way you can get pressured now is very oppressive. All of these changes have made the game feel a lot smoother than the first one. One of the main criticisms the first game received was how floaty it all felt. And if you're a new player coming into One's Justice 2, this will probably still feel more floaty than most arena fighters out there, but it's a massive improvement over the first game. That said, this faster pace isn't without its problems. The game's tracking issues have increased, with characters completely missing attacks, especially with the high mobility the game has now. Attacks can feel a bit awkward when they miss. That said, you cannot fight without picking a stage first, and this time around you have all the returning stages from the first game, with some additions featuring different sizes and walls to splatter your opponents into. The previous game also used to have ring out stages, but those ring outs were completely taken out of the game. They have been replaced by this invisible wall, which some players are going to like that change, others are going to be like, well, why? Take them out of ranked, but why would you take them out entirely? Some of the new stages also include breakable floors where you can smash a character down through the ground. Though this doesn't serve much of a gameplay purpose, it's more of a visual visual spectacle. Most stages will also have houses and objects that can be broken or destroyed by simply dashing through them or by unleashing attacks near them. And while the destruction can give a sense of power to these battles, the amount of destructible objects in these new stages has been increased, and more often than not leads to objects blocking your view right in front of the camera. So while at first it might be novel, over time it becomes quite annoying. Oh, and speaking of annoying, level 2 supers are still way too long. This doesn't apply to the entire cast, but most characters have insanely long supers where the animation isn't even that good. It just lingers on certain shots for way too long. And this was something that was quite easy to improve over the first game, but instead they have decided to double down on it. And that's the gist of the gameplay. This is how the game works across all the different game modes. So now that you know that, let's talk about the different ways to play Once Justice. Starting with story mode. Story mode takes about 4 hours to complete, divided between the story from the hero's perspective and then the villain's perspective. It starts midway through Season 3, immediately after the All Might vs. One for All fight, and ends with the big fight between Deku and Overhaul midway through Season 4. Story mode is once again nothing more than a series of battles with a few animated panels in between. The panels are fully voiced in Japanese, there is no option for the English dub, and the panels are quite nicely animated, but they're still just manga panels. There are a few cutscenes, but very few. You have 2 cutscenes in hero mode, one at the start and another one at the end, and then villain mode has 5 cutscenes. Weird how they saved them for the villains campaign. And the cutscenes do look nice, but just like the previous game, there are too few of them to make this story mode a good experience if you haven't experienced the story yet. Definitely watch the anime before playing, or risk having the experience ruined. Each story mode also unlocks a character unless you've bought the deluxe version or pre-ordered. In that case, the characters are already unlocked, so no need to even play the story unless you want to unlock a few customization items. These items can be unlocked by completing optional objectives within each mission, but there's no fast way to restart the mission if you're trying to get all the optional objectives. Let's say you got hit by a random super, now you can't win the battle with 80% health. This means you have to go back to the menu and enter the mission once again. There's no quick way to retry. Seems like a big oversight. At the end of story mode, there's also a nice surprise that somewhat breaks the monotony of fight after fight. I won't spoil what it is, and players seem pretty happy about it. I'd say it's a step in the right direction, giving story mode a more unique feel. I definitely appreciated the surprise, but the mission itself, I wasn't a big fan, but I think I'm in the minority given the players' reactions. Overall, story mode was a bit of a disappointment given how little it improved over the original game. If I'm able to create 90% of story mode by just picking different characters in free battle, then it's just not a good story mode in my opinion. But story isn't everything there is to do offline. There are a few other game modes that you can engage in, and some of them have been quite revamped. But let's start simple with free battle. This is where you come to fight offline against the CPU or another player. You can fight with or without assists and set the timer to wherever you want. There's also a new game mode where another player can control the assists. Basically, the way it works is you pick a main character and 2 assists, and the second player will call whatever assist they want into the stage and control them freely. They have access to all that character's abilities, but if they get hit once, they leave the stage and their assist gauge starts recharging. But while that's happening, you can call the second assist if you want, and just keep playing. You can only play this game mode with 4 players. You cannot have 2 players against the CPU, which feels like a weird choice. And it's chaotic. It's a chaotic 4-player game mode with 4 characters launching abilities and specials all the time. It's a nice gimmick for whenever you manage to convince 3 of your friends to play this game, but it can also be equally frustrating. Characters will focus the enemy's main character or their assist almost at will. There's no way to change targets, but hey, it's a silly game mode that should be viewed as a weird party game activity, though at the same time it does feel somewhat disconnected from what the rest of this game is. Still, I'm happy that the option is there, and before you ask, yes, this game is also available online, but it has some very weird restrictions that make it almost impossible to play. We'll talk more about it once we get to the online portion of this review, but first, let's talk about the offline mode that was revamped the most. Mission mode. In this game mode, you have a hero agency and you recruit heroes and villains for that same agency, essentially buying them with the currency you earned from other game modes. And after they join your agency, you can set up your favorites and they'll be on the front page of this mode. There's a whole diagram of who plays well with each other, which you should be looking at before choosing a team to go out on a mission. Once you've picked your team, you're ready. Dispatch on increasingly hard missions. Missions take place in these boards. Boards have enemies that will be dealing damage to different areas. Your goal is to destroy all the enemies before they destroy any area. Your character's health will carry over from fight to fight, so if you take a lot of damage in your first fight, you gotta fight the rest of the mission without recovering health, though sometimes there are health pickups along the way, as well as other buffs that will be useful in battle. This game mode is a cool idea that I think was poorly executed. First of all, it's an RPG. As you complete fights, your characters level up, and your enemies also have levels depending on the mission you choose, which means the game encourages you to just pick the same character for all missions, since the experience isn't shared with the characters that you didn't take on that mission. You're gonna have to replay the old missions to level them up a bit, otherwise you just won't stand a chance. And then the boards do increase in complexity over time, but you also see a lot of repeated boards, where you can just take the same path over and over again. At first, it looks like a puzzle that will get increasingly interesting, forcing you to think which path you should take if you want to save everyone, but turns out the puzzle doesn't get that much interesting. The difficulty of the fights does increase, but the way you choose your path never changes. All of that put together makes the experience feel a bit boneless, but that said, there are a few things that this game mode does well. First of all, you can equip a few buffs that you unlock over time to take with your team on missions. This customization is interesting and makes you feel like you're crafting your own playstyle. Your enemies might also have these buffs, and some of them are very broken, and they will change fights significantly, which will add variety to this game mode. And finally, all of your opponents are customized, which gives you some cool ideas on how to customize your characters in the future. They usually follow a theme on every mission, and you can tell someone had a lot of fun making these customized characters. In the end, there is some fun to be had on mission mode, but the idea was better than the execution. Regardless, it's something to do offline, and it's much better than the first one's Justice mission mode. Finally, we have the arcade mode. This is a much simpler offline mode where first you pick a character, and then you defeat 3 groups of 6 opponents each. Every time you defeat an opponent, you get a little dialogue interaction between these characters, and some of these characters have never interacted in the show, so the dialogue you see is unique to the game. Though it is written dialogue only, it's not voiced. Once you finish a group of 6 opponents, you will get an image unlocked in the gallery. It starts as a concept drawing, and eventually you unlock the final product once you beat all 3 groups. As far as arcade modes go, this one is pretty standard and doesn't do much unique. The dialogue between characters, while it's a novel idea, it's rarely satisfying, and the reward for beating the arcade mode with a character is an image in the gallery. Overall, arcade mode doesn't add much value to this game in my opinion. Moving on to the online modes, One's Justice 2 remains almost the same as the first game. It has received some improvements, but in my opinion, it didn't get everything it needed. First of all, the netcode is still solid, just like the first game. A lot of players still play with unstable connections or over Wi-Fi, but that's not the game's fault. The netcode allows me to play against people from Australia, and while the delay is noticeable, it is incredibly stable. Currently, the game does have an issue where matches are disconnecting randomly. It's an issue reported by many players. There's basically a 50-50 chance you won't finish your match. And it's not your fault or your opponent's fault. The game is having issues right now. I believe this will be patched, so I'll ignore this issue in my final score. But before you buy the game, double check if this has been fixed. Otherwise, I recommend you holding off on your purchase. So putting that aside, a great improvement that was introduced was a rage quit penalty. If players intentionally disconnect from a fight, they'll be put in a player pool with other rage quitters and won't be able to play against other players for a while, finally penalizing intentional disconnects. Other than that, not much has changed. You can pick the same modes as before: unranked matches, ranked matches, and private rooms. Ranked and unranked are still the same as the first game. You matchmake with someone online and fight with the characters you picked beforehand. If you fight in ranked, you still get points even if you lose, which means the leaderboard isn't a real ranked system. It's literally a leaderboard that shows who played the game the most and not who plays the game best. And it's a huge bummer that this hasn't changed over the first game. Private rooms have received significant improvements though. You can now select characters and stage after joining the room, meaning if you want to change anything after a match, you don't have to remake the whole room. But once again, the improvements didn't quite go as far as they could have. Rooms still only support 2 players, meaning you can't bring all of your friends into a room and play one at a time, and there's still no way to spectate other people's matches. And then finally, the new 2v2 mode that we talked about earlier is also available to play online. This is the game mode where you can play with a main character and a friend can play with the assists. That said, this comes with some very weird restrictions, which is gonna make it so hard to find anyone playing matches this way. First of all, your partner must be local. You cannot play with a partner online. They have to be sitting next to you. There are workarounds for this. On PlayStation, you can play with SharePlay. On PC, you can play with something like Parsec. On the Switch, I guess you're screwed, because natively, the game won't let you play online. It requires a local partner. Furthermore, this partner must have an account with PlayStation Plus. If you invite a friend over to play this, he better bring his account with PlayStation Plus, because who is paying for that on 2 accounts? Your partner doesn't need a copy of the game, but still, having your partner restricted to a local player and requiring a second account with PlayStation Plus are 2 restrictions that will severely limit the amount of players playing this online. So while it could be a nice gimmick to try out once in a while, it's gonna end up being a dead game mode in a very short time. Even at launch, it wasn't easy finding a match for me, and this will only get worse as time passes. That wraps up all the game modes, but a huge part of this game is also the customization, which you can take pretty much into any game mode with the exception of story. First of all, you can edit your player card, customizing it in a number of ways, but the star of customization is the characters. You unlock customization items and outfits by buying them at the store, by playing in online modes, and by completing the optional objectives in story mode. Customization has been revamped from the first one's Justice. There are clearly a lot more options, which makes your character that much more unique. I'm also a big fan of the new UI. It's much cleaner and makes it easier to see what we're customizing. Overall, I have nothing but good things to say about the character customization. And before we score this game a final word on presentation, first of all, the game only has Japanese voices, which I know is a big deal for some of you, and it was advertised on the Bandai Namco website that it would have English voices. That, unfortunately, is not the case. So I wanted to clear that up before you bought the game and got disappointed. Visually, I think the game looks fine. The character models look good, though some characters have too much visual noise in their attacks. It becomes hard to see anything else in the fight. It's done to convey that the character is powerful, but there are ways of doing that without cluttering the entire screen. And I'm still not a big fan of the stage destruction. Objects feel like they're made out of paper. There's no weight to them. And I wish this game would move away from these destructible objects, since it's not even satisfying to break them. They're just in the way. But the game doubled down on the amount of destructible environments, and it doesn't look any better. But where they really went all out was with the soundtrack. It is miles better than the first game. Some tracks are really inspirational, others just groove harder than a JoJo soundtrack. It's incredible, and a few of my favorites have been playing on the background during this entire review. And with that said, it's time to score this game. If you're new here, we use letters for our scores. F and E are the bad games, D and C are okay, B and A are the good games. And this is my score for My Hero 1's Justice 2.
君は本当に言われたことを守らないよ。
There's no doubt in my mind that this is one of the best arena fighters ever made. The game has done nothing but improve over the first one. Even if a lot of those improvements feel minor, they do stack up and make the whole package feel much more complete. That said, despite the impressive roster and how unique each character is, the lack of a real ranked system and the mediocre single player experience are gonna keep this game from getting the highest possible score. But that's my opinion. I'd love to hear from you. If you've played 1's Justice 2, let everyone know what you think in the comments down below. That way, if someone comes to this video wondering if they should buy it or not, they have my opinion, but they can read yours as well. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku, and I'll see you next time. Boy.